Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Crew.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
East.
East.
This is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Geoffrey D Calhoun from the Script Summit Screenplay Contest, and you are listening to The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yes, we did this last year, and I wanted to make sure we got a chance to do it again. We're going to talk about the Oscar movies, and we're going to post this up right before Oscar weekend, so hopefully our predictions will at least have some kind of interest in them. And I should say also co-hosting with us, and this time without the tuxedo T-shirt, our analyst from Album Fights, Richard Lackie. Richard, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, buddy. Glad to be here.
And then, of course, it's sort of funny introducing John as a co-host, but oftentimes he and I don't co-host things together anymore. But John and I are doing this one together. So I just want to throw out the first question here. There's 8 movies nominated for Oscars. We're going to focus on A Star is Born and Bohemian Rhapsody, fellas, and try to just get a sense for what we all thought of these movies in a kind of a compare and contrast style. Not too album fighty, but definitely feel free to disagree with one another actively. But Geoff, when you look at all 8 movies and these 2 movies in particular, do you see either of the music-based movies as the best picture or best actor or best directing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm all in for A Star is Born. I have to tell you that right now. I think this movie it's an example of intelligent filmmaking. And to be honest, you only see a film like this a handful of times in your life.
Wow.
Very interesting.
That's really saying something. I think this might be a short show, but I agree with you. Geoff, I really felt like this movie was very, very special. I felt like it was one of those times where people venture out to do very gutsy things with very sincere intentions, and the planets align.
So let's, Richard, when you hear these things, these praises, a generational film from Geoff, John, not backing down from that, what are your thoughts in terms of what you saw with The Star is Born?
Well, I'll say I was pleasantly surprised to hear that. I thought there might be a little bit more disagreement. Now, do I think it's a generational movie? I don't think it's the best movie this year. I think of the 2 movies that we're kind of focusing on, I think it does what they're trying to do. I also think it will elevate Lady Gaga's career. Whether it's definitely special, and I definitely, like I say, I think it's in as far as best movie running, I think it's probably sitting at second or third. In certain ways, significantly better, as far as from a full film, better than Bohemian Rhapsody.
All right, well, we'll get to Bohemian Rhapsody in a second. I wanted to get back to Geoff. Geoff, you said it's generationally good or something akin
Absolutely.
to that. But why? Like, you're saying it's smart and everything else, but you have a different level of understanding because you're a script writer, you're a script fixer, you know story. Help us understand what you saw.
Yeah, this film, it just hits every layer. So, and not to mention that the story is tried and true. I mean, we're looking at the 4th remake now with this version of it. So obviously the formula works, but I really think it kind of comes down to the characters themselves, very relatable characters. You've got Bradley Cooper's, rock star from Arizona, who's just a really good guy. He just loves Allie and he'd do anything for her, but he's incredibly tortured soul who suffers for his art. And he suffers with addiction, which is actually a very topical thing right now to have. He's suffering with painkillers, and that's I mean, everybody can at least relate to somebody that they've had in their lives who've had to deal with that. So, they're hitting current topics, but they've also made him sympathetic and empathetic so that you feel something for this character, like deeply through his journey. And the same with Allie, and the fact that it's a love story hits home. Whereas with Bohemian Rhapsody, they're doing like a biopic, but I found it very difficult to relate to that character outside of the fact that, he's not very grounded and he's a huge rock star, but I feel they kind of glossed over certain parts of his life that could have given us a much more real version of Freddie Mercury.
Oh, that's an understatement.
I'm glad you brought that up that way. If it's an understatement, Richard, what do you think they could have done? And I'm not asking you to know the details of Freddie. If it fell short in that direction, what do you think it could have done to bolster that factor for you?
Well, this goes back to Pete actually texted me during the credits when I was watching Bohemian Rhapsody, and I ended up talking with him, 30, 45 minutes in the parking lot or something like that afterwards.
Yeah, for sure.
And I got out of it. I was like, wow, that was really enjoyable. It was a fun movie. Malik was incredible, chameleon-like, turning into Freddie Mercury and everything. But something just didn't sit right with me about the movie. And I'd heard the criticisms that it kind of glossed over stuff too much and everything. And I definitely saw that, but something just didn't feel right with me about the story. I was like, I told Pete, I said, it's really good, but I don't know if this is accurate. Like, and when I mean, I don't know if this is accurate, I'm like, I don't even know if any of this is really the story of Queen per se. So I, went home and got online and started doing research and realized just how much artistic license was taken with this movie, which I found very strange because I understand, and this is how Geoff kind of came into the picture in this discussion. Is he's like, well, we got Geoff, and he's a screenwriter. Maybe he can enlighten us a little bit on this. Is that they just there's a story there, and I think Geoff's right. There's a lot about Freddie's life that could have made this movie what Bradley Cooper did so well with his character in A Star Is Born, is give some weight to, you see him partying and you realize he's being irresponsible, but it's so overly glamorized, and not until he comes out with his diagnosis does it have any weight to it other than the fact that it kind of messed with the band. I start reading it. They didn't even break up. Queen never broke up. That is the crux of that movie. They had just 8 weeks prior to Live Aid finished their most successful tour they ever had. And to me, it's like, I understand you have to take artistic license to tell a story simpler, but that's not even factually accurate.
Geoff, when you have a band coming off their most successful tour, and they, you're like, no, let's have them break up, and then have Freddie basically die at the end of the movie,
right,
even though he lived for another 6 years. If it's a biopic, why? Why do that?
I mean, I can't speak to the pressures that they had in filming this thing. I feel like they just wanted to paint everything in a very positive light. But kind of, and Rami Malek was amazing, of course, but I think where it fails is that we never really get to learn Farouk, I think was his birth name. Yeah, we never really get to learn who he is. Within the first 3 minutes, he jumps into being Freddie Mercury. And had we shown that struggle of him trying to find himself, I think we would have had a character that was far more sympathetic or even more empathetic with an audience, instead of just going into this rock star dream where he falls for all of the typical trappings of fame.
Do you think that the writers were afraid of that character being so... Where was he from? Was he Iranian?
No, he's Pakistani, isn't he?
He's Pakistani. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Do you think that the writers feared that he would be too Pakistani and therefore unrelatable? Because I feel like the universality of that story would have been, he is from somewhere else, and he's got to deal with, he is a fish out of water, and he's got to deal with that on top of coming of age, on top of realizing his sexuality, on top of, trying to hone his artistic sensibilities. There's a lot there that they could have worked on with regard to making him and the band struggle without having to make shit up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. If they had leaned in on his crisis of identity, I think we would have had a far more character-driven film. And I can't speak for them, but it just feels as if they're really trying to protect the legacy.
Okay, just point of correction. They were his parents were from India.
Okay.
Right. I was going to say, but this is an important point, is they made a point of calling him a Paki in the movie several times. And then they said, no, but I'm from India.
Yeah,
but
okay. Okay. I'm glad you made that correction. Paki is just a slang term for brown person from over there. I don't understand.
here's a biopic where we're left confused on his origin. You know, he's born in Zanzibar. His parents are Indian, and we don't know what he is because the biopic spent time calling him Packy or whatever.
Well, I mean, my point is
I think that was a joke.
People are called Packy in places as a slur.
Okay.
But we still should have escaped that experience knowing what he was and what the real struggle was about. So I get them using that as a slur, but it was so unmemorable what he really struggled with as a kid that the slur ended up influencing what we thought was true. So
I mean, they hardly touched upon it, really.
Yeah.
Did it bother you guys at all that Freddie got to play this sort of? Granted, he's the front man, but everybody in this band wrote songs, wrote hits, every single person. But they made it seem like, what does Freddie want to do? Okay, let's do that. And then they all kind of
and
just
boy,
went
does
along,
it work when Freddie wants to do it.
Right.
Here's the thing, that is kind of bothersome. But let's talk about the story as if it's not untrue. Because I think we're acknowledging that they played hard and fast with the truth. Setting that aside, though, what they did to, their effort to play hard and fast with the truth was to have a really compelling story. And what I think we all felt was that the story itself, even if it had or even if it was completely fictional, it still was good without being spectacular.
I agree with that.
Here's a perfect example. Did you get emotional at any point during that movie? And did you get emotional at any point during A Star Is Born?
No, that's a wonderful observation. With Bohemian Rhapsody, I walked away thinking that was a pleasant film, but in no way did I have an emotional response to it because I didn't feel any kind of sympathy or empathy towards the character. Whereas with A Star Is Born, I was completely moved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The biggest 100%. Part of my emotional response to that movie was because I remember when I was a kid and the US Festival was around. And then I remember just sort of being enamored by the experience of a big, big concert. And so when Live Aid came and Queen had their Live Aid performance, which I think was the pinnacle of Live Aid, that was what brought me, my emotional response. And so really that had very little to do with the craft of story. And it had very little to do with emotion being kind of built up, momentum wise to bring me to a place. I was just revisiting a place in my own, memory and imagination and lore. And they sort of, I kind of feel used a little bit.
Well, I think Pete and I talked about this. That Live Aid concert is so historically accurate. I mean, when I was watching it, because Live Aid, being the music nut that I am, Live Aid was a really big deal for me going into, I think, my junior year, our junior year of high school.
Yeah.
It was the first thing I ever recorded on VCR.
Wow.
I remember that. I had those tapes. And even though I hadn't seen it in 30 plus years or whatever, watching that, I knew that I was like, that is exactly how it was. But that's the problem with this movie is they were so focused on making things like the concert so right and so accurate that I think it just made the movie very enjoyable and very fun. Do not get me wrong. And it was nice cinematography and stuff, especially in some of the quieter moments of the film and everything. But it was a guy who could do a really good Freddie Mercury pantomime, as good as you can do it. So don't take nothing away from him. I think he's going to win Best Actor. I think he probably deserves it. But everything is just trying to make recreations look really, really accurate. Yet the emotional story isn't, which it still conflicts with me. And then you've got something where with A Star Is Born, you have a guy who said, not only am I going to star in this, I'm also going to direct it. And I'm also going to learn how to play guitar, and I'm going to learn how to sing just to do this movie.
Yeah. And I'm going to direct the hell out of it. And I'm going to pull performances out of people and really knock it out of the park.
and that this is the thing I think that distinguishes it is while Malick did a fantastic job of recreating this larger than life person, Cooper created something, really created something, and had to recreate it in a sense live. And in other words, he had to actually do all of the performance, not just pantomiming and moving and stuff like that, but he had to actually do the performance. And I just think that Bohemian Rhapsody is a very good package.
Meanwhile, I feel like Geoff is like, you old motherfuckers. When Live Aid was around, I not only was not a junior in high school, I read about it in a book. I wanted to like the girlfriend in Bohemian Rhapsody, and I did like her, but I wanted to be more emotionally connected to her experience for some reason.
Yeah, not enough. There wasn't enough character development. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it almost felt like she was plugged in.
I want to ask, or actually, I want to say one thing too about the concert. I don't know if you guys noticed, but there were some inconsistencies. Again, why get this stuff wrong? But in the very first part of the movie, when Freddie Mercury's ready to walk out on stage at Live Aid, they had U2 coming off stage, but they had played two bands before. And then when they actually when time caught up at the end and they went on stage, they actually had Dire Straits walking off. And it's just a simple thing like that, like, I don't know if they reused a scene for some reason or whatever, but I think those things, when you're doing a historical biopic movie, I really want you to nail the facts as much as possible. Like, I know that the crowd in Wembley looked the same. They did a great job with that, but don't get stuff like that wrong. And I got to admit, this is just me, but it pulled me out of the movie. Freddie's movie teeth were way ridiculously big, way bigger than they are in real life. Yes, he had the overbite and the extra teeth, but I kept thinking his teeth are not right. Did you guys find yourself in that position at all?
I just felt that it was more of a caricature of Freddie Mercury is kind of where I was coming from. And I was just like, okay, well, when are we going to get to the good stuff? And it just kind of stayed the course.
Is a caricature okay though when you're doing a biopic and doing like this impression movie?
Well, if you want to preserve the legacy, then that's how you're going to do it, But if you want to get down to the nitty gritty and really show who this person is, then you got to really pull the curtain back. And we never really got there. If you really look at this movie and you analyze it, whenever you see a scene of him really on the down and outs, it is usually the quickest scene in the movie. They don't spend any time with it. They want to get you through it and then get to another concert, get you through it, get to another song. Whereas, when you see in A Star Is Born, you see Jackson Maine, he is in his alcoholism, in his addiction. You see what it is doing. You see how it is affecting the relationships, and you see the ugliness of it. And that shows character. They're not just trying to rush you to the next song. And actually, if you don't mind, I wanted to build a little earlier in what we had talked about with Bradley Cooper. If you really look at how they made this film, we like to use foreshadowing or subtext when we create screenplays or make films. They did it to the point that every song in the film is foreshadowing either what is happening to the characters internally or what will happen to them soon. And that, to me, was next level filmmaking.
See, this is what is contrast between these two films, because Bohemian Rhapsody's problem, I think, the inherent problem with it that we're all having, whether we're struggling to understand why they made choices that were inaccurate, even within their inaccurate choices, they had continuity issues. All kinds of small flaws that really you could let go technically. But the reality is that when we're comparing these two films, you're talking about the intelligence of the filmmaking process really being honored. And, Bradley Cooper, I think he's got a master's degree, right? He's got an MFA in film from the New School.
Yes.
And
Yes.
What before that, his undergrad was Yale drama. So this is a guy who's a real student of film, of theater, of creating emotion. He's 100% in. And I'm not taking anything away from whoever, made Bohemian Rhapsody, because that was a fun movie and we all somewhat liked it. But we're comparing it with greatness. And greatness that starts with, I'm going to take this craft so damn seriously that there isn't any part of it that I'm going to let slide. And I think that what we're seeing is the result of that approach and that building of a career that explored drama and comedy and stage and screen and, every form of the craft. And now we're converging on, let me bring music in and let me take music so seriously that it's not a flaw in this film.
Yeah.
And it's a whole lot different. It's just a different caliber of filmmaking. When you talk about the foreshadowing going on, that is such we can dissect this film from any perspective. We can say, well, I'm a musician and I appreciate musical films, and here's why this is special. You can say, I'm a writer and I appreciate the craft of storytelling, and this is why this is special. And you can say, I'm a director, and here's why this was such a special film in terms of pulling the performances out of people, making the relationships within the movie real. Really, any part of the craft that you want to analyze, we can go in and we can go down the list if you want and talk about why this movie was great from every viewpoint. Would you guys agree?
Absolutely.
One of the things you have to account for, too, is obviously Bradley Cooper has taken the leap and earned the right to take the leap because he does great things. But this is also a Malpaso production, and Clint Eastwood doesn't make bad movies. I felt like he had a real role in guiding Bradley towards where he needed to get to. It felt like a movie that Clint would have directed. Did you guys have the same sense?
Oh, yeah,
I think there's something to that. Yeah, for sure. I think that his influence is something that Bradley Cooper probably was thirsting for. Because let's face it, in terms of being a filmmaker, he's seeking out the best. He really wants the best, the most experienced, the most varied, the most, he's looking for, he's searching for knowledge. There's a handful of guys that can tell you as much as Clint Eastwood can tell you about making a movie. And I think that when you're talking about the production of them together, it was probably a whole lot of teacher-student that was very, very deep in subtext, where, he's just sort of soaking up the energy from the old man in the cave in the mountain.
Richard, what are your thoughts on this being a Clint Eastwood-like movie?
I think you can definitely kind of feel. I honestly, Pete, I had never even thought about it till you brought it up, and thinking about it, yeah. I don't think you're someone that is as it seems to be as academic as Bradley Cooper. I think we've all kind of agreed that he kind of seems to approach it from a very academic standpoint. I don't think somebody like him is going to go through a career and not learn from the masters. And I think you could say that Clint Eastwood is a master. One thing that hasn't really been brought up, and I don't know if this falls into that. I don't think it does, but just the one thing that I took away from it is the cinematography in that movie is not talked about, and it should be, especially the concert scenes, because concert scenes are so hard to get right, and movies never get them right, ever. They never get them right. I mean, you can argue this the Live Aid scene in Bohemian Rhapsody, yes, but there's that first concert when she shows up, and the shots that they had from that. With the sun going down and the views from backstage that actually looked like real backstage at concerts and not movie backstage at concerts, and just the sun going down and everything. Every year here at Memphis, we have a huge festival, and it's a very, very big deal to us. And I've gone every year for like the last 25 years, and it's the first time I've seen in a movie where you feel like you are physically at the event and it looks like a real concert. That is a detail that not everybody sees, or that's not even necessarily important to people. But when all these little things we're talking about is these details in this movie, and that was just one of them where it's just like, this guy gets it. He understands the subject he's talking about. You know, he's not a rock star.
Geoff, I wanted to ask you, I wanted to get you in on this because, yeah, I totally agree with what Richard's saying. You felt like you were in the band, and for me, it made me care about the people in and around Jackson, Maine, as they all saw this train wreck coming. What did you see as a storyteller?
Yeah, I actually wanted to build off of that, and I think John had mentioned how Bradley Cooper brought in, the best of the best, and there are a lot of writers that have credits on this film, but one of them that I noticed is the gentleman by the name of Eric Roth, and he has been a screenwriter on films like Forrest Gump, Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I think you even did Ali. So this is a guy right there is a storytelling powerhouse.
Yeah, that's going deep. I mean, that's assembling an all-star team.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing.
What exactly was Clint Eastwood's? Where did he figure into this film?
And he knew that something was special about it if he's going to get behind it, because he's
for sure.
He's at the top of his game. Everything he touches right now is just, from $1 Million Baby on up, are fantastic. Grand Tour.
Yeah. He's just, and you have to wonder, is it because he's picking so well, or is it because once he steps into the ring with a film, then everybody has to raise the bar? And in either case, in either case, he's a part of film history in so many ways. But I think we haven't yet even talked about Lady Gaga. And she was beautiful and vulnerable and brilliant in this movie.
And how much of this do you think is her autobiography too? Because I sense a lot of it. I sense a lot, because I know they had very long sessions before the movie, before they even started shooting, and you had to help but feel like those experiences of her character were firsthand knowledge about her career, and because the character started very similar to how she did, playing in gay clubs in New York and stuff like that, and the rise and the pressures, and in a way, and this is not, I don't mean this to sound negative. I think it takes a little bit away from her performance, because I think she was kind of playing herself a little bit.
I don't ever think that takes away from the performance.
Yeah,
I mean, there are times when, but
it's a very minor nitpick. I'm not taking away the actual performance, but I just think I think her job was a little bit easier maybe than Cooper's job, because he was kind of out of his element a little bit. More so than her, is what I think what I'm saying. I think maybe it was a little bit easier for her. Great performance, don't get me wrong, but I just to me that
I think that the safe place for her to draw from her own history, of course, but her contribution was far and away even past the acting and the singing. She actually co-wrote a lot of that music. So now you have a pop star who was dipping into a whole new genre of pop country, which, think about how crazy that is. I'm not a music pro like you guys are, but to me, I was blown away seeing her sing in a completely different genre.
Yeah, I'm less impressed by that, and that's not taking anything away. She is a writer of song, like you are a writer of story. So I don't give her any extra points for reaching out of genre, because I think she's capable that way. What I really loved was, and I'm jumping way ahead here because there was plenty I loved throughout the movie, but I don't want it to go unsaid, that she took the finale of that movie and said, put it right here on my fucking back. Put it right here. Put this camera right here in my face and let me take this thing to the goal line. And man, the last few minutes of the movie where she just sang right into the camera were so strong. And here's what I'll say about your comment, Richard, with regard to her sort of playing herself. I almost feel like that could be a double-edged sword. It could work to your favor in that you know the material, and especially when the material is something like, that's so unique, like the pressures of stardom thrust upon you. But it could also be a handicap in that you could cop out on it.
I think double-edged sword is the best way to put it. I think it makes the movie beautiful in a sense that there is it lends some credibility to the story, because it's not it's not 100% accurate to her story itself, but there's enough in there to know that it's kind of a tip of the hat to Cooper and the storytelling that, look, this is the real deal. This is what this world is like. So it's almost a form of a way of her of getting a kind of stamp of approval, like this is industry accurate, I think. So don't get me wrong, I'm not really shitting on the performance or anything. I'm just saying that to me it seems like it's a little bit more of a stretch for Cooper. I guess it's just me kind of comparing their two roles and kind of what was done.
What he had to go through to get there.
Is that the fact
you had to go through to get there?
Right. She's not stretching muscles that she doesn't already kind of know how to stretch. And Cooper is having to lift some pretty heavy weights kind of without that prior is all this is the point I was trying to make. Her performance is fine. I don't think she's best supporting worthy, but her performance is great.
Well, I'm going to push back on that with you, Richard, because there's a couple things. First off, she's nominated for Best Actress. Second,
she's not.
Second, the other thing is
she's not. Yeah. She's not Best Actress worthy. She's not this year.
Okay, she's not Best Actress worthy. But here's the thing that I know, right? When we look at Pete, this is her first, role in a movie, and like John said, she put that movie on her back when you needed someone to stick the landing, and she said, "All of me." Can she do that in a stadium? Yes, but can she do it with that camera in her face? Yes, and I don't care if she played her own part. Deion Sanders did what he wanted to with the football because he could take the ball to the house. No one else could do it like he did. When Roger Clemens went to the National League, they said he's not going to throw at batters' heads. He's Roger fucking Clemens. He'll throw at anybody's head he wants. And all of the people that exceed that greatness level and get to the true superstar status, they do things. And so I'm going to let Lady Gaga be an incredible actor until she proves otherwise.
I did not say she wasn't. I didn't say she had a bad performance. Don't.
Well, but I'm not saying that you said that, but I'm going to say that until I hear otherwise, I'm going to give her credit for having a Oscar-worthy performance, and that I'm confident she'll do it again.
Let me clarify. When I said Best Actress, I meant she won't win. She's not deserving of winning. She's definitely deserving of the nomination. So I want to make that clear, but I don't think she did not have the best.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero, co-host of the Break It Down Show and fellow producer here at Lions Rock Productions. And I'm proud to announce our newest show. It's called Justice. Season 1 is going to be a deep dive into some of the cases I personally worked on as a licensed private investigator, and you'll get a unique view into the criminal justice system that may just challenge some of your personal notions about how it should work and open your eyes in ways you never imagined. So keep your ears open for Justice, a brand new podcast from Lions Rock Productions to iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
So I want to make that clear, but I don't think she did not have the best performance by a female lead this year. She just didn't.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, Geoff, and I know we've talked about this a little bit off mic, but I wanted to get your thoughts. When Rami Malek delivers this great performance, right? But when you look at it compared to the other sort of recent biopic music performer movies, and Val Kilmer's not exactly recent, but he did a great job with Jim Morrison.
Right.
Jamie Foxx did a Oscar-worthy performance with Ray. And maybe if Walk the Line had come out before Ray, maybe Joaquin Phoenix would have won an Oscar because his was excellent. Those guys all sang. Remy didn't lean on the singing really at all. I know he sang a little bit, but let's be honest, most of the time he wasn't singing.
Right.
Does that impact your opinion of his performance when you see what other people did with other historical singers?
I always appreciate it when I see an actor really go for it. But when I'm looking at Freddie Mercury, who is, legendary status for his vocals, I guess personally, I wouldn't expect that actor to be able to go for it.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to nail.
Yeah, there's few could, if any. So that's, yeah.
However, Jamie Foxx played the piano.
Oh, I did not realize that he actually did that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Before they made that movie, he sat with Ray and Ray blessed him on the piano.
That's awesome.
And Ray put him through the paces. So, I mean, there's where the bar is. And I guess that's why, we sort of feel the way we do about that performance being a pantomime. Which one of you guys said that performance was a pantomime? Because that really hit it on the head.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. It's not quite karaoke because he didn't sing it. And it's not to downplay it, but when you compare it to Jamie Foxx, when you compare it to Joaquin Phoenix and Val Kilmer, I think of those four performances, I think it is the least impressive.
And even Joaquin Phoenix came under fire for his performance. I remember back when that came out, there was a lot of critical reviews that saying, he's nothing like Johnny Cash. And I remember that, it took a lot of bravery for him to even try that.
Yeah.
Well, he sure didn't look like him, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. I mean, and that's, I think a lot of Malik's performance is the fact that he greatly resembles Freddie Mercury. So it makes the illusion a lot easier. I mean, Phoenix, that's an uphill battle, Yeah. I mean, now, mind you, Johnny Cash is out of the, except for, later years hurt Johnny Cash. The young Johnny Cash is, that's something that our parents remember, but we don't even remember that. So, again, I think Malik will probably win for Best Actor, and I think he probably deserves it. Yeah, I mean, how can you compare it to Ray? How can you compare, Jamie Foxx and Ray? How can you compare that, Not to mention the fact that he was emotionally kind of one note the whole movie. Wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you agree? I mean, like, there was never really a really high or really low, except for, flamboyance on stage, which if you're going to play Freddie Mercury, you better get that right, But where was the emotion, even when he told the band he had HIV, which didn't happen then, by the way. But when he did that, it was kind of like, oh, hey, guys, let's do this concert. By the way, I found out I have HIV. Oh, okay. Let's hug.
I can't bring that. I mean, personally, I can't bring that on Rami Malek as a character decision. Yeah. I would say it's probably more direction.
Right. Okay.
Based. Yeah. I mean, because I think
that makes sense.
He nailed mannerisms and look and all of that stuff. I mean, you can tell the guy really studied how Freddie Mercury moved around and how he had stage performance and the dominance he had while on the stage. You could tell he absorbed all of that. But when it comes to the emotional part of the story, I mean, actors can take some blame when they don't bring the performance, but he's very capable of bringing that performance. If you refer to his other work, so I have to wonder if it's a direction issue, especially since they had different directors on set, and there's a whole big thing about the production blowing up.
If you compare Remy's performance to Bradley Cooper's performance, and Bradley, in effect, is doing a biopic of a character that's been done 3 times almost, so he's not ginning this thing up from scratch. But how do you guys qualify that particular Best Actor comparison?
That's a tough question. I think that I'm going to start this off, fellas, and okay, here's the thing about Rami Malek. He did really nail those mannerisms. He clearly studied Freddie Mercury. I felt like he was acting Freddie Mercury all the way from his feet. And, he definitely deserves a tip of the cap for that. But I never really did get the range of emotion from him. And like you said, Geoff, that's probably a direction issue, partially a story issue. But for Best Actor, he's not only up against Bradley Cooper, he's up against Christian Bale as Dick Cheney. He's up against Willem Dafoe as Vincent Van Gogh. And that's a tough crowd.
Bale's Dick Cheney was a bit one note.
Okay.
There wasn't a ton. I didn't think there was a ton of range in that part. I mean, again, but it was an incredible.
Yeah, but you want to talk about, Lady Gaga having a bit of a step in that she was playing a lot of things that she had been through herself. Here's Christian Bale playing Dick Cheney. I mean, that would be like me playing a 7-foot black guy.
No, it's an amazing transformation. I think I'm speaking more to the film than I am to the the performance is uncanny, but much like Malik's is, where it's kind of he just kind of bleeds into this person that we all think he's playing a Dick Cheney that the world how the world sees Dick Cheney, just like how the world sees Freddie Mercury. Like I don't know how much of the real Freddie Mercury we got, and I don't know how much of the real Dick Cheney we got, because they were playing very public figures, and everything kind of in between is up to the interpretation of the filmmakers and stuff like that. So I don't know how historically accurate that Dick Cheney is as far as how he was. The performance though, and the emotional range of the character, again, just like Malik, is kind of one note. He's kind. I mean, it plays to the story though, because he's this guy that's just kind of head down. I'm gonna control everything in every way possible, but he never. There's no swing in the acting whatsoever, as far as like real highs, real lows and stuff. So it's kind of hard outside of a good impression to see what it is. Yeah. As far as acting goes.
Geoff, your comparison between Rami Malek and Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, I'd agree with you that the gradient emotional range is a bit deeper with Bradley Cooper's scene. And if you just look at the comparison of Rami Malek's Freddie Mercury when he gets the diagnosis in the doctor's office compared to, and spoiler alert here, compared to Bradley Cooper's interpretation of Jackson Maine preparing for suicide. Those are two completely different scenes.
Oh, man.
And one of them brings you to your knees emotionally, and the other is a blip on the radar, which it shouldn't have been. I mean, that journey, if that was what we were going to take for Freddie Mercury, it should have had more. And it regrettably didn't.
I mean, do you think, Geoff, being the storyteller of the group, the one thing that you walk away from Cooper's performance, and the one thing you walk away not seeing from Malik's performance, and I think maybe the thing that separates it is subtlety, is the subtleties in Cooper's performance and varying steps of emotion and the subtlety of those scenes compared to Freddie Mercury is just big.
No, yeah, I mean that's a great way to put it. If you picture in your mind's eye that the moment where Jackson Maine is about to close the garage door and you watch the emotional range on his face, that is a master actor right there, going from total fear to self-doubt to acceptance. In one scene with no dialogue, the camera right in his face, and you're just watching that emotion wash over his face and in those forms of gradients. And then the door closes and you're just left there like, wow. I mean, I can appreciate the scene. I'm impressed by the performance, and I'm honored to have been able to view this film.
And also the sort of the comparable scene between the AIDS diagnosis and Bradley Cooper going to the record exec, and the exec making it clear that there's just no room for Jackson Maine in Lady Gaga's life. That moment, it's the same diagnosis. It's death. And what a difference in those two scenes.
Yeah, wow.
Absolutely.
Here's another contrast between the two films. We talked about the girlfriend in Bohemian Rhapsody and how we never got attached to her and there wasn't enough of her. But I still managed to get attached to Andrew Dice Clay.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Wasn't he good?
Yeah. Yeah. That was so good. That character was so good. His portrayal was terrific. And I was, happy for him. He was a proud dad. He finally got to live through the, whatever it was he was searching for in the I once drove Sinatra around.
Yeah, he lived vicariously through Sally.
Yeah.
He had his own little subplot. And that's really what we were missing with the girlfriend, which how sad is it we can't even name her.
Yeah, right.
Was it Kim?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Can I play contrarian here a little bit, Pete? On a point you just made?
Sure, I think you should.
No, I never play contrarian. I may have opinions, but no, I actually did not like the scene with the record executive. That was one of my hangups after leaving A Star Is Born. I felt that scene was overly ham-fisted, and I kind of in a movie that seemed so so built on subtleties and accuracy and kind of legitimacy. I felt like that was a caricature in a movie that was absolutely devoid of caricature.
So,
and it felt super cliched.
Let me ask you this: do you not like that scene because of the fact that he's an evil arch-villain caricature, or do you not like that scene because emotionally you realize at that point what Jackson Maine was probably going to do?
No. I didn't like it because I felt like they put a mustache on the guy and said, "Hey, twirl this and tell her how." I just think it could have been done in a much more subtle way that matched kind of the feeling of the movie. I just feel like it was to me it was a scene out of a lesser movie. It was like an I feel like it was an oversimplification of what was going on. He spelled it out too much, in my opinion. Now, look, I'm not a screenwriter. I won't pretend to be.
No, I think I love your opinion. Can I break down a couple subtleties of that scene?
Please.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So the guy comes up to Jackson Maine and they're talking. And if you notice, what is the first thing they start talking about? If you can remember, what did Jackson Maine ask him? One of the first questions when they sat down.
Was it like, when are we leaving, or when?
So the guy's flashing. The guy's sitting there with him. I think he's drinking a coffee or something. And Jackson Maine notices that the guy doesn't have socks on his shoes, right? And here Jackson Maine's the guy he wears boots, right? I mean, he even breaks up his drugs with his boots and snorts them because he's like the manliest man in the world. And then you have this guy not wearing socks, and then they have this whole conversation about socks, and that's pretty weird until you start really breaking down the subtext of that script. So they're talking about socks. He says, "No, I have socks, but they're hidden." So what that's revealing is that he has this hidden intent, and then immediately after that, we find out what the hidden intent is.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that, but it still doesn't change that scene. I don't know if it was the particular dialogue or when he and look, we all knew he was going to commit suicide at the beginning of the movie. I mean, this isn't anything new.
Yeah.
It's just the best telling of this story that we've seen so far, and it's a great telling. It's just that one scene to me. It just felt like they turned the character into what felt like a mustache twirling villain to me. It just there, and we're only talking about just minor changes in either the way the actor acted it, or the direction, or maybe even a little bit of the dialogue change. I appreciate the subtlety of the sock discussion and stuff, but that still doesn't take away the. It felt to me like a scene out of something like Mean Girls, instead of like, it seems like somebody who's kind of been around the music industry and had to give people bad news and stuff, that the guy just wouldn't go from 0 to 60 so quickly.
I feel that. Yeah, and I completely respect your viewpoint, but I think the whole point of that character is to truly show the opposite of Jackson Maine in every essence.
Right, and
his choice of socks to his attitude.
and I think this kind of goes to a little bit of my critique of the movie in general. Pete and I talked about this earlier. And you can't do a 3-hour movie. I realize that. You have to, but it felt a lot in the movie that they took some pretty large leaps in time, but yet you never felt that passage of time. Like things accelerated at times. To me, is a very kind of quiet story that's being told very deliberately, and then sometimes they would just kind of take leaps that felt a little like, oh, we got to edit down 5 minutes. We got to take this out. And that's, look, I understand the commercial reasonings for editing and taking some stuff out, but it just felt like there are times when things just kind of accelerated a little bit too quickly. And this is just one of those scenes. It doesn't kill the movie for me. It's just one of the things that I walked away from where I was like, I really didn't like that scene. That's all.
I don't disagree with Richard on that. And I think that part of the problem is, and I'm not going to try to put words in Richard's mouth, but like Geoff is saying, he's trying to create a certain character part. You're not supposed to like him. I still don't like Glenn Close because she was so good in Fatal Attraction. Like she acted her way out of my happy place, and I'm always like, oh, there's Glenn Close. But that's just because she was so good. I think the guy nailed the role. You're not supposed to like it. You're supposed to be uncomfortable. Here comes the beginning of the end, and that I don't know for me how to sort that out from any kind of trope sort of playing. And I didn't find it to be tropey. I found it to be, a necessary, well-played moment. And definitely in the case of comparing and contrasting between Bohemian Rhapsody and A Star is Born, I found it to be a much better telling of that scene. Could it have been better? Sure, but I'm not good enough of an actor or storyteller to say what could have happened differently. Just really briefly, since we're nearly done here, what other performances from the other 7 or 6 movies that were nominated, what else stands out that you guys want to make sure we at least mention before we wrap this thing? Geoff, give me your picks.
Into the Spider-Verse was nominated, wasn't
it? Animated.
Yes.
Yeah, love animated. That. Oh my gosh,
should have been in Best Picture. Should have been a Best Picture nominee.
Well, it's because maybe because it was animated, they didn't give the extra boost. But my goodness, another take of just really smart filmmaking.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah, the whole flawed mentor character. I love seeing that in a film because it works so well, and they just nailed it with Fat Peter Parker, which was just it was just great.
John, do you have another movie that stands out for you this Oscar season or a particular performance?
Oddly enough, Period, End of Sentence, which was nominated for Best Documentary Short. Yeah, really strong film, really interesting subject, really educational in terms of how much we don't realize we don't know about a lot of people walking around in the world just trying to make their way. And I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want any spoiler alerts out of it, but Period, End of Sentence. Yeah.
Neat.
Richard?
The best performance of the year was Olivia Colman in The Favorite. I think actor and actress. Awesome. And I think take away 5 minutes of pretentious bullshit at the end of that movie. I think it's hands down the best movie of the year. I think it's best picture. It is the first movie that I've watched, with maybe a few Paul Thomas Andersons being the exception, that felt like Kubrick to me.
Yeah, Olivia Colman's a fantastic actor, and all you've got to do is watch a little
BBC. My God.
Anything you see her in. Olivia Colman never exists. It's always the character.
When I saw her, the first time I saw her was in Broadchurch, and I was like, who the fuck is this human being, and why isn't she in everything? Mm-hmm. Because from the first time you see her on the screen, she's perfect, and I've never seen her in a bad role ever. No, but The Favorite is, I think, a sadly overlooked movie. I think it's Best Picture this year, but what do I know?
Yeah, lots of great movies, lots of entertainment, and I guess I should say, for all of us, to be fair, I think we all enjoyed Bohemian Rhapsody. We definitely found it wanting in the compare and contrast, but I think everybody enjoyed it. We're having these conversations kind of like the disclaimer and the album fights. We're doing this because we love these movies. We love these performances. We want to highlight them and just don't be too hard on anybody. We like everybody.
It's worthy of all of its accolades, its nominations. I think Malick will win Best Actor. the subtleties of whether he should or not. I mean, it is a role that will be remembered. That movie will be watched probably more than any of these other movies. Maybe Star is Born is the exception. Yeah, it's not about not liking the movie. I walked out of there very, very happy. It's just we're talking about Best Picture.
Yeah, it's a difference between a really, really good film and a great film.
Well, gentlemen, pleasure as always.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really enjoyed your breakdown of the way those stories are told. And for our listeners, Geoffrey Calhoun, he is a storyteller who will help you tell your story if you give him a chance. Richard, always a pleasure. I always love the opinionated delivery, and sometimes I disagree with it, but I always have to respect it, and I really enjoy taking apart these works with you.